hello, Bible Quiz World. So I'm Joey. I think everyone knows me, and I'm joined here today by a couple of special guests from the history of Bible Quiz. So you all probably know I've been around quiz for a really long time, nearly 30 years. Well, all of my guests today started quizzing more than 30 years before I started. And they were from the national champion. They're from the first national championship team, 1963, and that was from Boulder Crest Assemblies of God in Atlanta, Georgia. That team later became Decatur, who won nationals in 1976 and 1978, and then that team became Dunwoody, and Dunwoody, I believe, is still involved with quiz. So the person you see on camera here is Scott Lorenz. He was the captain of the team that won. So I'll go ahead and let Scott sort of introduce yourself and the other people who were there with you.
Yes, I'm joined by my wife today, Brenda Lorenz. I'll show a picture of her. And I'm also joined by the assistant coach of the team, Pat Cobb. And I'll show a picture of her.
I was reading through some memorabilia that I have. So do you recognize this?
Oh, absolutely. Learning Luke. Yes. Looks very familiar.
So this is the first study. It's basically study guide for Bible Quiz. And I wanted to point out a couple of interesting things that I saw in here. There's instructions for making your own quiz box.
Yes.
And there are,
we did, by the way,
the first set of rules in there. Reading through the rules, they haven't changed a whole lot. We've certainly added a lot of stuff, but one interesting thing that I saw was it looked like quizzers used to be able to, both teams could answer the question, and one of them would whisper it to the judges, and the other one would say it out loud, and both teams could get points for it. Does that ring any bells?
Well, I think that was in case of a tie, but I don't recall ever having a tie.
Okay. Okay, and one other thing you'll notice sort of on here is there are gloves. So what can you tell us about sort of the setup of a match in 1963?
Well, yes, we had an electronic box in front of us that you had to reach up and hit the button on, but you also were required to wear a glove. You had to raise your hand at the same time so they would know who was hitting the box. They didn't have to guess at who hit the box. So that was to help the officials at the time recognize who was the one to answer the question.
But the first one we didn't have a box.
Right. The gloves were used actually before we had a box. Pat was of that. So yes. So
So maybe this is a question for Pat. So how did your church first get involved in Bible Quiz?
That's a question.
Well, Pat, they're asking you, how did the church get involved in Bible Quiz? I was
remember.
Well, I can remember how, to a degree, we had a lot of interest by the local CA rep who was over the Atlanta area, and he pushed the Bible Quiz. So he was very interested in that. We actually started quizzing before Luke. It was the first book that we really studied was Acts. Yeah. And the pamphlet was Action in Acts was the title of it. And so we had some prep work in doing that. They didn't have national competition at that time. It was just everybody getting used to the idea of quizzing. And so we had local competition, and I don't recall any even regional competition, or it was just local competition. You didn't have anything to go beyond that with that first.
The first one y'all went to Columbus.
Yes.
And then from there to Memphis.
Right. Well, yes.
That wasn't the first time.
Yes. So it was a lot of push from the local CA rep. We also had our local pastor and his wife were very involved with it. They were very involved with the youth. The pastor's wife became our coach. Our Sunday school teacher, who was Pat Cobb, was the assistant coach. And she was also the sponsor, you might say, of our local CA group. And so we took advantage of that by going out to her house lots of times for meals and that sort of thing, and fellowship and that sort of stuff. And so they all encouraged us in that regard to get involved with the quizzing, because it gave us a chance to go beyond just the Sunday school lessons that we'd been teaching, that we'd been taught, and also got us involved in concentrating on learning scripture and remembering it. So those were the pushes from the pastoral staff, as well as from our Sunday school teacher and the local CA rep too.
Okay. Are you familiar with the name Owen Carr?
Yes.
So he's actually he's still alive. He just turned 100. And my mom is in a nursing home in Springfield, Missouri, and he actually still preaches there. So Owen is the person that was basically involved with getting Bible quiz started in the Assemblies of God. So I believe it had been practiced in other denominations a little bit years before that. But yeah, so some of you might remember he spoke at the 50th anniversary in Columbus 10 years ago. So I guess I'll ask, what all do you remember from the season of quizzing? So I guess maybe you kind of touched on this, that the first year you only really quiz locally. So you want to talk sort of about the road to nationals in 1963?
Well, the road to nationals in '63 started for us in 1962, really, because we had competition on a state level. Probably, I think it was maybe Thanksgiving or something like that, because we had regional competition right after Christmas, before New Year's, and we had that regional competition, I think, in Columbus, Georgia, right?
Yes.
And but it was between the break between Christmas and New Year, so that left us with over 6 months of prep time for nationals.
Oh wow!
So it was unusual in that now, they don't do it that way at all. They have the state and the regional competition much later, but it gave us a lot of time to prep for it, certainly. And then we went to nationals in Memphis. And it was a new experience for us. The regional competition was held in Columbus, Georgia, which wasn't far from Atlanta, so we didn't really have to travel very far. So this was really our first long road trip to go to Memphis. But it was a whole new experience because nobody had ever done this before. It was a first time. It was the first time not just for the quizzers, it was the first time for the officials. It was the first time for a lot of people to see Bible quizzing for the first time. And a lot of it was new. I recall going to, they had an orientation meeting of all of the quiz teams before the competition actually started. I think it was probably on a Thursday evening. The actual quizzing, they had 2 rounds of it. Was it one Friday night and one Saturday? I don't remember. Do you? Anyway, but in any case, the final competition was held before 7,000 people on a youth night of the General Council at Memphis, and
on the main stage.
On the main stage, yes. Right. It was a unique experience. We hadn't done that before.
So one thing that was certainly unique about these first few years of quiz was nationals was a single elimination tournament, and there was only one team from each region. So imagine going all the way to nationals in Memphis from California or something like that, and then you're knocked out in the first round. So what the rest of the time? But so from our website, the first nationals took place August 23rd and 24th, 1963. Lee Schultz was the national coordinator, and Stan Walters was the official question writer. I guess so. Your team won. You beat First Assembly of God in Plainview, Texas, in that final round. What can you say about the questions compared to today?
Well, The questions, well,
Much more memorization
there's
is required
yeah,
today.
yes, I would say that it's much more memorization is required. I mean, when we went, we had memorized some of the scripture. We hadn't memorized the
You
whole
had to me-
book.
You had to
We had
memorize
memorized at least one
chapters.
chapter, but we hadn't memorized the whole thing. That was certainly something that's changed quite drastically from then to now. And the first round of the competition was a little bit unusual too, in that the location of the questions, the 30-point questions, they saved two 30-point questions for questions 19 and 20. And so that was an unusual arrangement. We'd never had a quiz like that occur before. And that first round was the most competitive for us, the whole tournament, because the team that we went up against knew how to get to the buzzer quicker than we did. And they knew the material quite well too. But it was so unique that when we got to that, and our pastor, by the way, was keeping score himself, so he knew exactly where we were in the competition. And when it came to the 19th question, and we were behind by, I think, 155 to 90 or something like that. So it was more than 60 points separating us. And we knew, and he knew that if we didn't answer those two questions, then we might even not have enough points to, I don't remember the exact scoring, but anyway, it was close enough so that when they read the 19th question and the other team got to it first, it was an interrupted question. And so they had to complete the question and give the answer within 30 seconds. And when that occurred, our pastor folded his scorekeeping tablet and said, well, they're going to win now because they haven't answered that question and they needed to answer that one as well as the 20th one. Well, it took so long for the guy that completed the question to determine whether he should go ahead and give the answer, that when he did, he started going very slowly. And finally, he got to the point about, there was a 6-part answer or something like that. And he got to the 6th part, or the 5th part, and they called time on him. And then there was a lot of confusion at that point because that was the first interrupted question we'd had the whole quiz. And nobody knew what to do with the interrupted question because they were prepared to go ahead to the next question. In other words, the officials were. It was so new to them that they were about to do that. And one of our team members, by the way, we didn't have enough room to seat everybody behind the people that were quizzing. One of our team members had to sit in the audience for the quiz. And she spoke up and said, well, don't you read the question to the other team when it's an interrupted question and get it wrong? And they fumbled around for a little bit and said, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. So that's what they did. And when they did, we answered the question and then we're able to get the final question as well. And that gave us enough points to win the contest. But it was a really an unusual occurrence there that turned out in our favor, obviously, but it was something that we had not experienced before.
Right. Well, that's interesting. What do you remember about the final match? Just any specifics?
Well, the main thing about the final match that I remember is that I think I had quizzed out, and there was a question that was that my younger brother Rusty answered, and he, in answering it, he gave the answer, but then he said something about the fact that the question wasn't worded correctly. And he said that to Lee Schultz, who was reading the questions to us at the time. And it was very brash of him to do that, before 7,000 people and, everybody else that was there. And
He was about 12 years old.
And he was only 12 years old. He was a really short guy. And here he was challenging the question, even after he had answered it. But Lee Schultz recognized that what he said was correct by just giving us a slow bow to him, saying, yep, that's right, and it was just very funny to all of us for that to occur. But all of the other teams that we faced were very good. It's just that we somehow won that tournament because I think we had the best team unity, the best spirit about us, and the best camaraderie among the team. and we weren't in it to win. We were in it to do our best to show what we had learned. And certainly we were going to try to win, but it wasn't the main thing. It wasn't the main goal. The main goal was
Being together.
being together and using the knowledge that we had been given, and recognizing that our source was God and our strength was in God. So it was a very unique experience for all of us, I think.
Okay. So you win nationals, and then do you want to talk a little about what happened sort of over the forthcoming years? Just what sort of things did your Bible quiz experience help you with down the road?
Well, I think one of the things that came out of that was it developed lifelong relationships, I think. We still know each other and communicate with each other. And I think that we're very close to all of the people that were involved with that. And it just showed us that if you put your mind to something and put your heart into it and do your best, that you can accomplish some great things. And I think that's the thing.
They started to.
We worked with teams after that at our home church, as well as after I took a career move to move out of Atlanta. We moved to a church in Huntsville, Alabama, and started quizzing there. And also we moved from there down to Florida and West Palm Beach, and had some quiz teams there too. So it was encouraging to see other people get involved and start to see the benefits of the quiz program.
And that's where you met your wife, correct?
My wife was on the team. Yes. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
So James, who's also on the call, he met his wife through Bible quiz, a completely different church. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of Bible quiz couples out there. So I'd point out a couple of personal connections. So your son Rob, who he started BibleQuiz.com back in the mid '90s. He actually he quizzed in the early '80s and coached Marseille Johnson. Marseille was my coach. So
Okay.
so this still reaping dividends, and actually both Rhett and Rob coach James. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Rhett was my youngest brother, and I think he was on the championship team as well.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So any sort of as we wrap up, any words of wisdom for today's quizzers?
Well, I guess the best thing I could advise was that once you learn the scriptures, you need to learn to apply them to your life and your situation. You need to understand what your passions are and what your life should focus on, and serve others any way that you can in that process. And I think that the Bible quiz was just a stepping stone to doing your best in your future careers and your future opportunities to serve and be a benefit to those around you.